assistant was probably trying to text you. I was like, shh, did she know that? I just found out last night, late last night, that we're, that there's a call to boycott this platform that we're on today, and
Yes.
Facebook. Well, because their parent company, Facebook, because of their allowing for hate, and hate pages to stay up, especially the hate page that encourage people in Kenosha to go armed and aggressively attack the protesters, who are fighting for Jacob Blake, for vindication for what happened to Jacob Blake, so, and normally, it's like, it's so many things happening in orbit right now, like I feel like I'm in California, so I'm like, my God, I'm fighting the plague, the pandemic, the plague against our Black bodies, and now these fires that are feeling straight up apocalyptic, climate change has become a thing for me lately. I'm like, no, this is really a serious, it's a more serious issue than I think the BIPOC community, or at least the Black community, has made as a part of its platform to me. I'm like, oh, I don't talk about, like, my Black family, we not ever talking about climate change, and I talk to my family about recycling and stuff, and it's like, if they're in Michigan, it's like, it's not as big a thing to do that in Michigan as it is in like the coastal cities, like in New York, where that was a big thing. In California, it's a super big thing. Super. You can't even, in California, a store won't give you a bag. You had to pay for a plastic bag because they're not going to give it to you.
Based on I hear up in Washington also. And, I'm glad you addressed that, because I didn't find out about the boycott until late last night.
Right, me either.
Are you still doing? I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, well, and I'm totally, look, if you want to just say, hey, we're going to do a quick check-in and get off, I'm fine with that, because I want to honor your activism and your voice. And we can always do it another time, girl, because I'm flexible. I mean,
thank you. I appreciate that. I know that we're here and we have folks tuning in here, so let's chat for a minute, but I just wanted to use the platform to speak on the protest. I'm not, so forget if you've noticed that I haven't shared on my social media. This is why I'm not posting today, but I do think it's, we're talking, and you my girl, and I know it's one of those things where sometimes given a platform to artists of color, and I have had to figure this out in other work in the field, sometimes I end up engaging with the thing that I'm protesting, in order to serve the people I'm trying to serve. So there's sometimes that there's a dichotomy there, and it's not always easy to figure out where the priority is, because the priority will always ultimately be in service of the people that I'm fighting for out here, And what way to do that? Yeah,
I think that's true of all movements and all activists and artists who have stood up and expressed their activism in a certain way, because there's always this push and pull. Like if you look at artists throughout history who have sacrificed jobs, endorsements or any kind of deals just to be able to express how you feel. I think right now, though, we're entering a phase. I know me personally, I'm less concerned about the status quo and what people who are in a position to hire me can do, and more concerned about what we can do for each other.
That's right. Yeah, it's like I'm in a sense of both, like I have this, I'm an artist who obviously has engaged with, I engage with white American theater, I engage with white Hollywood, I engage with, like white people in our world, I'm not gonna not engage with them, but it's with who I seek validation from, or who I feel like I am kind of obedient to is not this like white gaze. So I'm not obedient to the white gaze on my work, I'm not obedient to it in how I think and how I move, but I'm sort of like, it's like I'm of two minds. I'm of like there's always a this or that, and I prefer to move in a and and space instead of an or space, you know? So it don't have to be like, oh, if you want justice, then you do this or that. I'm like, or you do this and that, right? Like, maybe I build in the spaces that I care about and put investment in communities that I care about while I am simultaneously and fighting these institutions, other institutions from within, you know?
Right.
And so that it doesn't have to be, it's like a little bit of, I just think you get there faster if you tear down and rebuild at the same time, you know, if you multitask. You know, as opposed to like, I can only tear down or I can only build over here, you know, because I feel like if I'm building while someone's attacking what I'm building, I'm never going to get those bricks off the ground, you know, and so it's like, it's that kind of thing. Yeah. You say it again.
I was saying, you know, we fought so hard and you fought so hard to get into these spaces where we have been let out of, and to just let that go would be detrimental to you as an artist. I think that, you know, hearing your take of fighting also from within is great. And I think I'm doing some of that also. I have not like totally cut off, like I'm never working at the theater again. Like I'm not there, but I'm definitely glad to be helping other artists lift their voices and speak their truth.
Yes, because we have to, because to your point, I do think it's a damaging thing to keep begging an entity, an industry, or whoever to let you in. And it's like, you know, and they're not letting you in. Like, why am I putting all my energy into you seeing the value in me instead of me seeing the value in myself and doing for myself, right? So there is, I mean, I'm of that mind as well, you know, like, I think that you're right, Dedra. Like, there can't be a sense that somebody else outside of you can give you power and can make you do what you do. We can't, that's just ridiculous. Like, somebody outside of you has the power to make you who you are. That's ridiculous. You know, like, you are the artist, you are the being, you create, you do the creating. No one has the power to give you your creative muscle. And how I navigate, you know, the spaces that I'm in is I'm always thinking of myself as I am the prolific one. That is my job to be as an artist and to create work and to have many works. It is my job to be prolific. It's not my job to decide for you if you like me or if you're going to pay attention to what I'm doing, but it's my job to create, you know? And so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do 100 other things. So if you like this one or you didn't like that one, that's okay. Like, I'm going to keep going because that's the thing that I have the control over. So anybody trying to do business with me, they're getting in bed with somebody who I'm creating regardless of whether you're paying attention to me or whether this deal closes or not, has nothing to do with whether or not I remain an artist. Nothing at all.
Look at that. Yes, because for so long, and even in our training, we're trained as like theater artists. When you go to theater school, is you're going to be dependent upon this person to give you the job. Like, you're going to go in the room and you're asking them to like you. You're asking them, please take what I want, instead of realizing that you hold the control. They can't do this without you.
That's right. That's right. I wish more actors, you know, I'm a writer and an actor.
Yes.
And I think coming from acting when I was just acting, you know, I did not feel like I had the power that I've learned that actors have. I didn't know what my power was. You know, as a writer, I grew into my power because it's easier to feel like you have power as a writer because you have, you're employing someone else, you know, whereas actors are only employing themselves essentially, right? In our minds anyway. And so we're not hiring, we're not actors, we're not doing the hiring. So then we don't really feel like I've listened to actors, I've talked to actors so much, and actors feel like they have no power, you know, in this game. They're in a pick me. They're always in a pick me kind of space, you know? Yeah. But I think that part of actors feeling like they have no power in this larger field that we're in, whether it's TV or film or whatever, is that we don't see ourselves as storytellers. And that's a problem, because actors are storytellers, right? Like, writers are storytellers and actors are storytellers. If you're a storyteller, your job, number one, is to serve story, right? And so you are there to tell the story, that whatever the story is that you signed up for, you're there to tell that story. As a storyteller, you have the power to decide how you want to be used as a storyteller. Is this the story you want to tell? Do you want to be a participant in telling this story? Not like, do I want this role, but do I want to tell this story? Because if I want to tell this story, I'll do a role in a story I believe in telling, and believe in getting told. And my role is to, whatever my role is, it is to push this story along, And if actors could see themselves as storytellers and they know that stories depend on them, then you wouldn't feel so powerless, right? Because it's not just pick me to make me feel good and talented and like a star over everybody else.
Right.
It's to use my instrument to tell a story. I'm lending you my instrument to tell a story. And that already by default puts you in a more position of power, because this story can't get told without you, right. And then you can think of how to then negotiate, the things that you need in order to be able to tell that story in a healthy way for yourself, right? Like, I need these protections and I need this income and I need this, safety on the stage or on the lot or on the wherever I'm telling these stories, I need these things that are going to make me able to do this in an organic, holistic, and safe way. Right. But I am here to serve story. It changes the way we look at ourselves, and we're not so expendable.
Yeah. It changes the way you walk into the room. If you know that you already have this amount of power, and I think that it also changes your ability to negotiate, not feeling, when you feel like you have to have the job because, I need the money, or, you're going into a mindset, into the position of the mindset of I need, instead of saying, these are the things I need to make me whole so that I'm getting paid, so that I'm healthy, so that I feel, my voice is being heard. And the more we do that, the more you step into the room before you even audition, asking who's directing, do you have any idea what their vision is for the project? So that when you go in, you already are going in a position of power. Yes,
right. Yes, right. And you're going in a position of clarity. Like, this is something I know I want to be a part of. This is something I know I want to. But when you see yourself as a storyteller, you also don't see yourself as so transactional, right? Like, because we move very transactionally inside of these industries, I mean, in the world. It's not even just in theater or film and TV. It's like, in the nation, it's like, relationships are so transactional. They're so like, what can you do for me?
White supremacy, transactional culture is what we live in.
Absolutely. Very white supremacist structure, and it's like, or I remember somebody coming to a company that I worked for once, and they said that it's the, when we were trying to figure out how to get our funding for this not-for-profit, they were telling us about this thing called the WIFM factor, the what's in it for me, that everybody that you're selling to wants to know what's in it for them. And that's very white supremacist structure, like, what can I get from you? How can I always be milking somebody else? And but when I think of, but if you can rearrange that in your mind, the what's in it for me factor is about how will I benefit, not necessarily economically, or how will I benefit, with visibility, but how will I benefit emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically, like, what is there something in it for me that will help me grow? And I think if we can figure that out for us, what I offer as an artist, is a gift, is a gift. Not like what I offer is a gift. I am a gift when I walk into this room, Let me now bow down to me, everybody. Like, don't nobody want to work with that person. I don't want to work with that person. If you come in my room with that, please don't. But if we do truly, in the truest sense, believe in the gift and the generosity of what we do, right? Then what we know we're bringing is an offer. I'm bringing an offer of service to you, to your work, to being a light in this room, to asking really thoughtful questions about the work that's going to help push the work forward. Like, I'm in service. I'm not in service of my own ego. I'm in service of this thing that could hopefully be in service to society. Like, that's the cipher that we're in. And so if we can think about that way, I really do want to, I'm really so deeply in this moment of activism in both our industry and our nation.
Yeah.
I just think it's time to reset, the self. Like, I think we have to also, the revolution can't happen outside if the revolution is not happening inside.
Look, speak. Yes. Yes.
Because I feel like this is a good time for artists to really reconnect with what their instrument is, and like what they are here to do as artists. Like, what are we doing? Because I feel like I've been here long before a pandemic, right? Like, I've been in a very frustrated space as an artist for quite a while, because
Yes.
I just, it's visibly on the outside, things might look pretty popping, like, there's a lot of things I have to do there's a lot more negotiating happening. There's a lot more fighting happening inside. And hey, to everybody that's throwing, I see it, in real time. But hey to everybody that's joined, by the way. I recognize a lot of familiar names or just what do you call it? IG account names. And I'm gonna keep reminding people, just because it feels like a duty to me, Dedra, that today is a day of boycotting Instagram and Facebook. We here, to
But
serve
get
them, because
off
both
as
of us,
soon as this is done. Get
right?
off.
Both of us figured this out very last minute, and so weren't gonna cancel, but just get off after this. I won't be posting today, so.
Right.
Know that this is where we're protesting the way that it's being used, that Facebook is being used to keep hate groups alive, it's particularly the ones that went after the protesters in Kenosha. We also have a situation in these streets where the police are like people are getting disappeared, on the streets by police. I mean, this is some very 1960s Mississippi backwoods stuff going on right now.
Yes.
And so, as we use this platform, let's subvert the platform. But so I do think about, in the larger thing that we're fighting for in the world, how much I just have desperately been wanting us to rethink the entire way, just rethink the entire way that we are moving in this industry, because we have been really, I don't know. I feel like we get pacified with opportunity and pleasure, and and status, and that can really keep us. And we end up fighting over those kind of scraps instead of seeing the bigger picture of what we're in. I don't. There's because there will never be in a capitalist structure that all of these industries operate in. No matter how dope you are, there will never be enough. There will never be enough for all of us. There will never be enough under that way of moving, you will never get enough roles. I've talked to so many celebrities who feel like, you ignored, or their moment was, they missed their moment, and I'm like, listen, these are like legends. I mean, I've had, I remember when I was working on Shameless, we would audition people. We were, for my episodes, and I would always write in elderly women and significant roles or this or that, right? And one day, Marla Gibbs came in and auditioned for me, right? And for those who don't know who Marla Gibbs is, the legend Marla Gibbs,
Yes,
Florence from the Jeffersons, right? Who changed the way maids will ever be done on television and ever have been done, know?
Right.
And so, but Florence from the Jeffersons and 80-something-year-old Marla Gibbs came in to audition for a recurring, on Shameless, right? And I remember, and along with her were a few other older white women actresses, and these were women they've been doing stuff, but I know who Marla Gibbs has been because I had my own personal love fest for her, right? And so I never forget that, thinking to myself, a woman like Marla Gibbs should never have to come and audition for nothing in her 80s. For this bit part, this this guest star role on this show. A woman like her should never have to do it, because we should know her stats. And in fact, I did but the casting did not. They didn't know her like that, you know. They didn't, it wasn't like they didn't know who she was per se. It just wasn't tons of women who had had careers in the past, you know. It was like you were watching how women get aged out real fast, you know. And I'm like, this is a legend. Who gets to decide who our legends are? Like, who gets to decide that? You know, if we let Hollywood tell us who our legends are, we'll have none, you know? We'll have none. So we have to say, no, I'm sorry. I let her hold court. I said, I'm sorry, this woman is a legend, you know,
Yes.
in my room, you know. I had to tell a story in our audition room. I had to tell a story. Like, I'm sorry, this woman, you know, back in Detroit when I was a kid, you know, leaving Cass Tech, my high school, and I didn't have no money for the bus. I stood outside the Renaissance Center begging for money to get on the bus. I was begging people for quarters. And I begged. I go to one lady and go, excuse me, ma'am, can I have 25 cents for the bus? And a woman turned around to me and said, what did you ask me for, child? And I was like, oh, you're, you know, and it was Marla Gibbs. And I was like,
I didn't know that happened.
yeah, it was me and Angie, me and Angela Lewis. And I was like, you're Marla Gibbs. And she goes, and she looks at me, you know, and then she goes, child, what did you ask me for? And I was like, can I a quarter? Can I get a quarter for the bus? Trying to get home. You know, Marla gives me the quarter and goes inside the Renaissance Center, right, in Detroit. And I'm like, I cannot spend this quarter. Now I got to ask for another quarter. You know, I got to get on this bus, right? So that was, you know, that was 20 years ago or whatever. I'm just going to say 20. I don't even want to talk about how long ago I was in high school. So, and listen, we're not going to do that. That's not what this is about. Is that what this is not? We're not doing that. So when Marla Gibbs comes to my audition room and I tell her, ma'am, you gave me a quarter back when I had nothing. You know, we gonna let her be a legend right now in this room. And the casting director goes, I believe that I feel like we owe you this. And he pulls a quarter out and hands her the quarter back that I owe her. You know, but I say all that to say, if we let this industry give us our valuation, they gonna give us zero. They gonna put us at zero or a quarter. You know what I'm saying? And we have to be like, no, that's gold, that's platinum. We're platinum. We know what we bring to this. We know what we offer. And I really do want to see us change the way that we think of ourselves in this field. I really do deeply want to see us divest from touting our awards and our good reviews and the things that others are saying about us. I want that so bad for us. And I get frustrated when I can't like impact it, you know, because I know you work so hard to get to where you are. When somebody says good job, you want to be like, look, they told me I was good. But who told you were good?
It's hard. That's tough because, you know, we work in an industry that's really, you only know how good you are if people are telling you. You know, we're living for the accolades and for the information received from them that we did a good job. But I agree, it's hard to shake that. That's something that I've been working on within myself. Just, you know, how do I value what I do and who decides whether what I do is good or not? Because I know for me, if I don't feel good about it, I don't care what anybody else says. Yeah. That's one of the things I also love about your work that you've done in association with helping, and I'm not sure how deeply you are involved in the casting process when you do a new project, but I assume that, you know, you are somewhat, but it's not like all these famous, you know, names like, oh, look, you know, Dominique Morisseau has a new play out. And then we had Angela Bassett, and I love Angela. I'm not knocking anybody, but I think that it's great for people to see that there's not just one Black Broadway. There aren't just a couple people who get to do something. There aren't just a couple people who get to be on TV and film. And I want us to get away from that.
Yes, me too. I do too. You know, and I'm somebody who I have worked with, you know, celebrities. I'm not a big I gotta stop saying this about myself. Sometimes I might sound a little anti-celebrity, so forgive me, celebrities listening. The all of you 27 celebrities listening, you know, now not celebrity now or later,
Right.
but I'm not I can sound a little anti-celebrity, and because I just, I think part of that, this, and everybody's a celebrity nowadays because Instagram and Facebook, everybody's a damn celebrity, and everybody cares about like how many people are looking at them and following them and blah 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 blah, and we're so obsessed with it. We're obsessed with fame in this culture, and I think it breeds a level of narcissism that is like intolerable for me. Yeah, like it's just completely intolerable.
Yeah.
I can't work with how are we gonna build? Like what are we building in a room together with when I can't get past your narcissism? Like I can't even have a conversation with you without you and your ego, all of your ids, like just at the table. It's like it's just too much. This is too many people. To be communicating with. And so I would like to see us slay that narcissism dragon, if it's possible. I've heard there's not a cure for it, and I'm hoping that maybe we'll find it, like we're going to find cures for a whole lot of stuff out here. I hope we also find a cure for narcissism, because it's getting deep, and I feel like it interrupts the creative process. It interrupts being an artist of service, like all the stuff that we talked about earlier. Like how can you be in service of story and of society and of other people if you are censoring yourself and rotating everything back to you, whereas as an artist, for me, I feel very much charged by what I'm supposed to be doing outwardly. I'll say this, I don't think that's the same as self-care. Let me just say that censoring yourself when you need to provide for yourself, care for yourself so that you can care for others. I'm not talking about that, right? But I am talking about feeding the me dragon, the like, how many ways, how many angles can I get this camera? Like how much can people focus on me? That's the demon that I feel like interrupts us being in service, of something greater all the time. And I don't know how to get out of this. So I say all that to say I'm not a big, let me put some stars in this for stars' sake. But I do understand the business of it.
Yes.
Right? So I think people don't know that. I think it's a problem when we start doing it on off-Broadway and you start doing it in the region. That's a problem, because that literally creates an employment problem in our field. Right? It like stops a trickle down, it stops a spreading across. It like really, really reduces employment. That is just a workers' rights problem to me,
Mm-hmm.
And then also it's also like I'm just not somebody I'm not that amazed by celebrity itself. Is not gonna do it for me. Not because a celebrity just happens to be a celebrity, but I really like your talent. That's something else,
Right.
But I'm not gonna put nobody in nothing because they famous. Who cares? But if I feel like that this really great actress who just got on a new TV show, if I'm gonna work with Nico's a celebrity now. I mean, Nico is somebody we went to high school with, but Nico's a celebrity now. Yes. I watched his followers go up like 20,000 people in one day. I was like, do you know your followers went up 20,000 people in one day? And I'm like, listen, my friend is still gonna be my friend, and I'm still gonna work with him because I believe in his gift, but the fact that he's somehow famous now that will not be that's not my entry point. I understand in a commercial sense, and that's for Broadway. Mm-hmm. People go like, how come Broadway always filled with stars? I'm like, that's a money problem, and that's a real estate problem. Like, I just want us to understand the way our industry works, because we don't really know. And when we don't really know how our business works, we think, for instance, I'm really good, I should be on Broadway. You being good ain't got nothing to do with you getting to Broadway. I just want to, for anybody out there, you being good don't have nothing to do with why you're going to be on Broadway. That doesn't mean that there's not a lot of good people, a lot of really great actors who are working on Broadway. It does mean that there's also a lot of really great actors who are not going to be working on Broadway. That's what that means. It doesn't mean that because your work is on Broadway is not good. There's some good playwrights whose work are being produced on Broadway. There's a whole lot more, and will always be a whole lot more good playwrights whose work is not on Broadway. because Broadway is a real estate game, you know? And if people don't know that, if you don't know how the business works, you think you make it very personal. You make it about you.
Right.
You make it like, oh, I'm not on Broadway because I almost got the chance to be good enough to be on Broadway, you know? And that's not how it works. Broadway is like, there's a few people that own a few theater houses, a few families, a very small amount, and none of those people are BIPOC, right? There's a small amount of people who own Broadway theaters, the ones that I'm in included, you know, and then everybody else tries to raise money and vie and pitch shows to them essentially and get in the queue to say, hey, you few families that own all these houses. Some of those houses are owned also by families who are from Detroit. They have houses in Detroit, right? They have theater houses in Detroit, and they also have theater houses on Broadway. And so a very small few people run a very, very big thing that all of us are basically holding our whole careers hostage on. You know, we're like, I got to get there to this place that only these few families get to make decisions about how all of us is going to do our art, right? Like if you think about that like that, you are nuts to think that that's going to measure or not whether you're good at what you do, right? Like how can that this is like, you know, and just like the real estate game, Broadway is like, you know, there's redlining.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Keep history of redlining. So there is literal, like you will be like, it's like this almost like, I say it's kind of like, and the way Broadway works is very much like our voting process, right? Like there's a lot of, I guess you know how we're looking right now at voting districts and trying where voting zoning is happening, otherwise known as gerrymandering. Right. There's gerrymandering on Broadway. Okay, like there's gerrymandering in the theater industry, and so if we understand that, you kind of, I'm not trying to defeat us in our minds. I'm just saying, like if you understand how it works, you won't feel at least you won't feel like you're not good enough, right? At least you know it's some BS happening out here. Right. And there's a system happening that we need to be fighting to change. And then maybe rather than turn it inward, maybe you'll turn it externally and fight the system.
Yes. And make sure y'all fill out the census if you haven't, because that is important when we're going into the election, and also it will help with the things that you are wanting. You have to make sure you have your voice is counted. So sign up for the census. Make sure you're ready to vote early if you can.
Yes.
What are some of the conversations you've been having with other art makers that are exciting you right now about like change for the future? Like what's really exciting you?
Kind of like what you were talking about at the beginning of this call. I think there's a lot of, I look at what we're in right now. We are in the middle of a second civil rights movement in our country, right? And after the first civil rights movement in our country, and then subsequent movements like the Black Liberation Movement, right? Like after these subsequent movements, things happen. You saw in Harlem and across the country, all these Black theaters got built, right? Like independent Black arts happened. And I'm certain that that's going to happen again. Right. I'm certain especially because now it's not just a civil rights movement. We're also in like a health movement. We're in a health crisis movement. Right. And out of this health crisis movement, out of this pandemic, some theaters will be leveled after this. I'm not scared of that. And I hope you're not either, you know, because some things need to die so new things can be born. So it's okay. And I have suffered personally a lot of like real life loss, you know, at this time.
Yes.
I've suffered so many real life people in my life. I know we've all suffered as a nation, you know, so I'm not censoring my pain over the nation's pain. Like we've all suffered, but I have in my own personal life suffered loss right before the pandemic, great loss, yes, during the pandemic, and still going, right? Friends, family members, just lots of people that I hold very, very, very dear. And in the losing of real life people, somehow the losing of like opportunity feels real slim. That feels like nothing. Who cares? You know, I don't care that I don't get that, you know, somebody's gonna call me and say, hey, we're passing on that play, or we're passing on this television show. Yeah. And I'm like, that's cool. I mean, I'm not gonna cry over you passing. I've had people really pass.
Right.
Human beings have passed on. I don't care about no story passing on. I'm prolific. I got 100 other stories. Let's go. And so I feel like I feel excited right now that it seems like there's an energy that I've been waiting for a long time, of us finally not sitting back, right? Like, we are going to build. We are going to build out of the destruction. We are building, and this is the moment where I think we can find our power, because, except for like maybe a few billionaires, nobody's doing better than you right now. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Billionaires is doing, they are profiting right now. But
Right.
most people is trying to cling to their jobs. So there's nobody getting ahead of you right now. So we're kind of all been leveled. And because of that, because we're leveled, I think that we can build, like we can start something new. I'm going to grab my charger before we die.
All right, grab your charger. That's true. I think it equalizes us, and I hope that it makes artists who feel like, they were behind, or they weren't up to par. Like, everybody's out of work. That's what I'm saying. Like, most people aren't working. We all are in this together. So it's not about saying what I don't have, but what do you have? What are you going to bring when we're finally time to work? How are you going to show up in a new way? That's what I'm excited about. I want to go into these rooms like fresh, like I want new ideas before I get in the room. And when I get in there, like, how are we using this time to really like ignite our energy, to move forward, to really do some change? Because if we just sit back and wait for somebody to tell us, okay, now it's time to go back to work, we've wasted this time.
That's right. You said that. I mean, we have. And it's like, I want to be careful too, because I know I've said this, but then I'm like, wasting time. Like, there's also the idea of like having to be some kind of level of productive that I feel like is also a little, you know what I mean? I know that's not what you're saying, but there's a part of that we get like, oh, you better be creating right now. I'm like, can I just be taking care of my soul? We are losing people. And like, don't ask me for no deadline right now.
And that's what I mean too. I mean, like, doing the work within, because at the beginning of this thing, I've said before, I was laying down flat. I was worn down, broken out. I had put out so much for so many people. I didn't have anything to give. I literally was done. Didn't want to be creative. And I'm not knocking anybody if this is not where you are right now. Even if you just have the energy to listen, be present in your stillness. Like, we have to be okay with being still, because as BIPOC, especially Black people, if you're not doing something, they're like, what, you're not doing anything? Look, we can just sit back and rest. Really. We have earned the right to be still, and that's okay.
We done earned a Black year. You know how everybody's like, I need a Black day? I think I need a Black year. I just need a year where I just can restore from the attack on my whole personhood this year. 2020, by whoever of us is so lucky to make it out of 2020. We will be the ones who survive 2020, okay? We are going to be the ones who survive. It's like the Titanic. We're like the 2020 survivors, And that's going to be a big enough feat already. Yes. But I do think that I agree with you that we can use this time to envision a different kind of future. That's the thing that I think is powerful. And thank you for writing. The rest is resistance. Yes. I see that in the comments. And rest is resistance. I always, a younger a mentee of mine, we had a conversation one day where she was saying she sort of feels like everybody focusing on self-care, and I need to do this for self-care and do that, and she was like, she sort of feels like that feels selfish right now, and I said, well, let's be clear about what self-care is versus like self-vanity, like vanity is not the same as self-care. I just want to, self-care is like, truly taking care of your mind, your body, your spirit. If getting a pedicure and a manicure helps you do that, sure. Getting braids after your hair has been looking like a lot of things, fine. But self-care is beyond the vein, is beyond the veil, right? Like, it's about the internal, right? Mm-hmm. But I said, if you think about the movements that have come before us, and how the terror that has happened and the violence and the terror that has happened to all of the movement leaders that have come before us, right? If you think of the Black Power movement, there was such a war rate waged on them. It created a damaging psyche. Like there's trauma that they have post-traumatic stress disorder. But what do you do? Like if you fight on behalf of the government, they give you, or are supposed to give you, benefits to help you deal with your post-traumatic stress disorder caused by the war that you fought on their behalf, right? But when the government is the one who waged the war on you, then you get no benefits, right? So then that movement gives the leaders and the participants inside that movement have to deal with the trauma and the violence that they suffered by the hands of the government, with no help. And so generations later, there's still a lot of deep wound. It's like Vietnam vets, it's like there's deep wounding going on that we haven't dealt with. So I say, think about now to hold on to your sanity in times that are trying to attack your entire personhood inside and out. To hold on to your sanity is an act of resistance, right? To center yourself and center your health, instead, not just yourself, but center your health, your mental health. That is an act of resistance and revolution. So please hear it like that too, because it's totally right. But I'm excited about where I think we are, the conversations that we're having, and I do think that we're gonna build not just a new thing, but many new things. I hope that more than people are like, in the ways that they're being productive, I hope that they're building with each other. I hope people are like envisioning together. That's what we should be doing. It's like, let's talk some vision together. What do we want to do? What we want to see differently? And how can we start planning for that? I would hope that people are doing that. I believe they are.
Me too. I just want to say for people watching, right before everything shut down, I was going into tech rehearsals for Pipeline here in Seattle. And when I tell y'all, now I've mentioned I was tired. My Naya, she was tired because Dedra was tired. But I was ready and so ready to live and tell this story. And I'm thankful that the theater, whenever things do come back, they're committed to doing the project. But I was like, I have to do one of Dominique's plays. I'm going to do more than one, but I'm saying I was so, because of our relationship and the history we had together. And whenever I read your words, I just want to tell you, I always think about how when we were in high school, and I'll drop a little gem for y'all, how you used to write poetry all the time.
Yeah.
And you've always been a writer. You've always been creative. And I know I've told you this before, privately and behind the scenes, but I am so proud to see you standing in your truth. It's not like they're like, oh, well, now Dominique's somebody else. You are you, like to your core. And I know that your family and your parents just appreciate seeing their blossom bloom. And I'm just so grateful to have been a part of the journey from the beginning. It's just amazing.
Thank you, Dee. I appreciate that. I think I remember writing poetry. I mean, I've been writing since I was a kid, as my way of understanding this very complicated world and also understanding myself, right? Yeah. But I first of all, I'm very excited. It's exciting to me that I have friends that I went to, high school with we are still in each other's orbit. We're still practicing the things in various degrees and in various ways in our lives. We are still practicing the art that we were trained in, in high school, in a predominantly Black city that showed us ourselves in the work that we were doing. And I think that had a lot to do with me being able to see, me being able to envision doing this for real. Even though I knew I wanted to be in the arts since I was a little girl, I didn't conceive of how that was supposed to happen until high school. Our teacher, Marilyn McCormick, she got us all very prepared for like going to conservatory or acting training programs in college. And I never thought that I could do that in college. I didn't even know that existed in college, And so that just to speak to the education part of it, like just who can help you envision what your options are for your future. That's a very huge deal. And education is such a big deal to me. It's such a big issue. I know I'm not done writing about education because it just bothers the shit out of me. It really is how the disparity in education is like, oh, they don't never want us. We ain't never supposed to get out of this, you know, like we're not ever supposed to have and transcend, and we're not supposed to. That's what the school to prison pipeline is there to ensure, you know. And there's a new podcast. I'm a podcast addict, so I have an app on my phone called Podcast Addict, where I listen to a gazillion podcasts. And one of them is this podcast called Nice White Parents.
Yes,
and I think
listening to it. Yes.
Are you listening to it?
Yes.
I think everybody, first of all, anybody that's going to do pipeline should listen to this podcast. But just everybody should be listening to this podcast because it really will tell you just how mad you should be.
Girl,
you know,
that first episode, I was like, I wanted to jump. I won't.
It make you want to. Don't ruin it for people, but I'll just say this: it is looking at the role of white parents and their young people, and their children, and how whatever decisions that they make for their children and education adversely impact Black and brown children. You know, and it's with all the best intention, and maybe I don't know if I always trust that that's the best intention, but intention doesn't matter. Intention is not always the same as impact.
Right.
You might have a intention to do something, but that's not how it landed. Right. And so, and that's what this podcast is looking at, and how we can, I always say, you're going to know where somebody stands more than anything, when people talk about their politics and their liberal politics or whatever, you'll know who they really are when it comes to making decisions about their kids.
Look.
That's when we start doing them. I mean, I'm not just talking about white people. I'm talking about everybody. Yes. We'll go, yeah, I believe in this, but not with my kids. I'm not going to sacrifice my kids. And then it's like, well, then, yeah. And I'm not that you should be sacrificing your kids, but what's the sacrifice? Like, it's that kind of thing that I think we have to figure out. It would change the way we vote and we talk about education if we can really know how it's going down for real. Yeah. This is like the theater industry, like everything. I feel like most of us have a very, very limited knowledge about all the industries that we are either participating in or that we give commerce to. We don't know how it works.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, ooh, if they knew over here inside the theater, first of all, people aren't even paying attention to theater, you know, so they don't even know to be outraged about what's going on in theater. They don't know what's happening because theater, by and large, isn't even including them, you know, in most things, right? But I'm like, if they just knew if Black Twitter only knew, like Black Twitter would come for that ass. If they only knew what y'all over here doing. I have been trying to figure out for a very long time how to get Black Twitter to find out what's going on in these theater streets.
Look,
you know,
you need to expose them. Yeah.
They need to know, because it's the only way that real change is going to come is when people feel like they have a public to be responsible to. That's the only reason why we're saying 5 years ago, Black Lives Matter was being called a hate group.
Right.
Anybody associated with it was being called, hey, they're trying to put on the terrorist list, right? 5 years later, Black Lives Matter is being put on everybody's streets. Those are words being canvassed on every city street. That's 5-year turnaround. That's a 5-year turnaround. How did that happen? Right? Because it started to impact economics. Yeah. And as soon as business was like, oh boy, well, that business put out a Black Lives Matter, we better put out our Black Lives Matter statement. And then every theater was like, oh shoot, that theater put out a Black Lives Matter. We need to put out we all need to be saying Black Lives Matter. It's like in the 60s when people put Soul Brother in the window so you don't burn us down. You know what I mean? It's like, let them know we're safe over here. Don't burn our business down. It's economic, you know, that's making everybody go, we got to get on board, you know. And so anyway, I can get on the soapbox all day.
Look, no, but it's true.
You know, if it impacts their economics, then we see change. And so I want to see us know how things work better. I just want us to understand how things work, because we get real myopic in our view when we don't know how the things that we're participating in work. And as soon as we figure out how they work, we have to be conscious of that every time we're doing something with them, right? Just every time we're doing something with them, we have to be conscious. I'll say this: I'm now working on a story, developing a series about restaurant workers with the organization called Restaurant Opportunity Center, ROC. There's a woman, she wrote a book called Forked and Behind the Kitchen Door, where her name is Saru Jayaman, and she's basically exposed the restaurant industry and the injustice in the restaurant industry, right? And again, we don't know. We going out to eat. We don't understand what's happening in these restaurant streets, in the some grimy, dirty stuff.
I from a perspective of, like, I worked in the service industry as a cocktail server, hostess, like, for years when I was in LA. And some of the stuff, especially where I worked, like the treatment, how you're treated, how they treat employees, and how the guests treat you. I mean,
it's a lot of injustice. It's a lot of racism going down. Somebody knows Saru. Yeah, it's a lot. It's so much, you know. And I'm like, for every industry, we're gonna have that same thing, which is why, just to bring our conversation full circle, which is why every industry right now is rising up. So to anybody that says, you know, because I know that some people might be thinking like, oh, why are these artists you're sitting over here in your work or your job arguing about the job, but there's real stuff happening in the streets. Let me say this: there's nothing happening in the streets that's not affecting these industries and these jobs. Right? And if you're only fighting in the street and you're not thinking about its relationship to the corporations and the businesses that you're part of, you're not thinking about real revolution, right? Because you're not gonna get change without economy. That's the reason why the NBA is out here wearing Black Lives Matter t-shirts and whatnot. They weren't doing that years ago. Why are they doing that now? You know, they're able to leverage. That is, whether we think it's enough or it's not enough, it's not even debatable, because nothing's enough, right? But nothing's enough until we get what we want. But the fact that is messaging and that is marketing that is happening on national television, that wouldn't happen years ago. And so everything counts in this economy. There's no way that you're going to get change in the streets if you're not going to get change inside of the industries and the financial, all the industries, right, that are going to embolden. They're giving money to corporations that fund police. You know, there's a lot of things. So when you are fighting for change inside of your job or your industry, whatever your industry is, you are fighting on these streets. There's no disconnect between the streets and the businesses that operate around them, right? You know, and I've been in 100 gazillion protests and movements. I've been out there during Occupy Wall Street. I've been in every Black Lives Matter movement, right? I've been in movement since I was in college, you know, when they were shooting, when we had in Detroit, they had shot and killed Malice Green. They had killed Frederick Finley at the Lord and Taylor in Detroit. I was out there in college going protesting Fairlane, you know, like, it's been a long I see somebody from college going, yes, you have. Yes. Hi, Aaron. Yes. But, you know, and so, but I just want to say, and so I can just tell you from my limited time that I've spent in this, because I'm not the OG. I haven't been here as long as my elders who've been in many, many, many movements, right? But I can just tell you from the things that I have seen that there is no disconnect. We think that we're disconnected if you're somehow not out here protesting on them streets right now, and somehow if you're calling for change inside of theater that you're disconnected. No way. My Black body cannot be policed on the street or inside your theater house. Exactly. I'm not sending somebody from Detroit to see my show on Broadway for them to spend their last dime or whatever to come see the Temptations, for them to get policed inside the theater space. No, it has to be holistic change throughout our entire nation. And so I want us to see our power, fight inside of your industry and fight on the street. Do both. Yes, and not this or that. Just to bring it.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you. Look, this is what I needed today. And I am content to log off after this. And if people didn't see it, it's going to be saved in the IGTV. They can watch it tomorrow. I'm grateful for your voice. And, you know, I'm here up north of you. If you ever need anything in Seattle front, I'm always going to be fighting the fight and ready to make some art together soon when we can. And I just want everybody watching and listening to use your voice however you can to fight for what you want. You know, whether your voice is a writer, you know, you're an actor, or you're whatever you are, whatever gift you have, don't be afraid to use it so we can move forward towards change.
Yeah, same. And I just want to say one last thing. It's kind of off cuff, but really, because a lot of us are theater artists that are watching this, I do want to say something like, you know, when we talk about change, there's a lot of organizations out here, and support all of them. Support all of the organizations that you see out here that are fighting for some change, right? Don't allow yourself to choose one instead of the other. Always thinking and, you know, it just makes us more full and holistic human beings. And then I also want to say, think about not always using Broadway as our divider, right? Like when I say that, we always like say Broadway playwright so-and-so or Broadway artist such and such, you know? I'm a theater artist, right? I'm a theater artist who happens to work on Broadway, but Broadway does not define me. It's not my headline, right? And so maybe if we do a little bit of like not putting status and attachment to who we are, it will help us see ourselves in each other, that we're kind of fighting the same fight together. So I just want to say that too, you know? I'm theater artist, Dominique Morisseau, you know? I'm theater maker, really. I'm theater maker, Dominique. I'm also storyteller. You know, that's what I really am, because I'm storyteller across all fields and across all ways in which I participate, whether a writer, or actor, or director, you know. And so I just want to share that, go and be some powerful storytellers in this world, and let's find our common thread to keep ourselves building something new for the future. Yay!
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Tell your friends to watch this on the IGTV tomorrow, and keep supporting BIPOC artists. All right.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Bye. And get off of Instagram and Facebook now, because today's a protest, everybody. Okay. Yes. Bye.
Bye.